Imagine this. You've just polished your resume, you've sent it off to your absolute dream job, and instead of landing on someone's desk, it gets whisked away into the cloud, where a machine decides your fate in less than a second. So what happens when that machine has a hidden bias? How does an algorithm even learn prejudice? And maybe more importantly, what can we do about it? Let's get into it.
So we're going to start with a real-world story of what happens when the tech that's supposed to help us actually makes a deeply biased choice. And yeah, it's a story about one of the biggest companies on the entire planet.
And this all boils down to a question that really, it affects every single one of us. Could an algorithm be the gatekeeper to your entire career? Well, for one of the world's largest companies, this wasn't just some thought experiment, it was very, very real.
All right, so picture this. It's the 2010s, and Amazon is trying to solve a huge problem. They get this mountain of resumes, and they wanted to build an automated tool to sift through it all. The goal was super simple: find the best people and find them fast. But hiding inside this shiny new efficiency engine was a pretty serious secret.
Here's what they found out. The system was, well, systematically penalizing female candidates. It had actually learned to associate male-sounding language with being a successful hire. So if a resume happened to mention something like women's chess club or listed an all-women's college, its score got knocked down automatically. The machine was literally learning prejudice.
And look, this was not some minor bug they could just patch and move on. Amazon actually shut the whole project down before it was ever officially used to hire anyone. But the discovery sent these huge shockwaves through the tech world. It kicked off a massive global debate about fairness in AI, and it forced everyone to take a much harder look at this kind of hiring tech.
So how on earth did a supposedly smart machine get something so fundamentally wrong? Well, the answer is hiding in the data it was trained on. And to really get that, we need to take a quick trip back in time and look at how we've handled HR data itself. A story that starts not with servers and databases, but with paper and filing cabinets. You know, the journey from paper to prediction took a while. For decades, everything was done by hand, just stored in big, clunky filing cabinets. Then, in the 90s, things started going digital. We moved to what are called applicant tracking systems, which are basically just big relational databases that could sort and query candidates. And that brings us to today, and the big leap into machine learning, where the algorithms don't just store the data, they actually learn from it.
So, where did Amazon's algorithm pick up its bias? It didn't just invent it out of thin air. No, the algorithm learned it from a decade's worth of our own decisions, all of them perfectly preserved in a database.
And this gets us right to the core of the issue. It's a concept called training data bias. Think of the AI as a mirror. It just studies the data we feed it. In this case, 10 years of Amazon's hiring history. And it learns to copy the patterns it finds. It figures out which keywords and qualifications from past successful resumes are the best signs of a future hire, and it gives them more weight. The problem is, it also learns to copy our blind spots and our prejudices.
This quote really just says it all. The data the algorithm was fed came from a time when the tech industry and Amazon itself was dominated by men. The algorithm didn't know any better. It just learned that pattern as a rule for success and got ready to repeat it, essentially locking in the biases of the past for the future.
And right here, this is the central conflict, isn't it? On one side, you've got all our historical data, a perfect record of what we actually did, warts and all. And on the other side, you have our goals for a fair and equitable future, what we want to do. So the real challenge is figuring out how to build systems that learn from our aspirations and not just from our past mistakes.
But you know, this whole mess wasn't just a cautionary tale. It was actually a huge catalyst for change. The lessons that came out of Amazon's experiment have been incredibly valuable for anyone building systems that have a real impact on people's lives.
The key takeaways were pretty clear. First off, you have to audit your data for bias right from the start. You just can't build a fair house on a crooked foundation. Second, human oversight is absolutely non-negotiable. You can't just set these things to autopilot, because their reasoning can be a total black box. And maybe most importantly, this story showed that fairness isn't just a coding problem, it's a database design challenge. We have to be intentional and build for equity, not just assume that chasing efficiency will magically lead to the best results.
And all of this leaves us with a really critical question as we design the tools of tomorrow. Do we have to choose? Do we sacrifice our goals for fairness and equity just to get the speed and scale of automation? Or can we actually design systems that give us both? That's the challenge that this story really leaves us to solve.